Senator, I listen to a lot of Israeli English media, and I try and talk to people like Michael Oren, but I haven't been there. You've been there. Tell us about what you discovered on your recent trip to Israel after the 10/7 massacres.
There's, as you would expect, a huge amount of anxiety and fear, and of course the intense desire to get hostages out. We met with some of the families, and that was a very emotional, very powerful meeting, and something that the Israeli leaders and officials are focused on as well. But I think the thing we have to understand, Hugh, and I made this observation to Prime Minister Netanyahu and his team when we met with them, that, I remembered after 9/11, I called back to our daughters in South Dakota to just let them know everything was okay, and my youngest daughter had two questions: Dad, are we safe? And Dad, are we going to get the bad guys? And I could answer those questions emphatically yes, because I knew that our country was up to the task. And those are the kinds of questions I think a lot of the Israelis are asking right now. But they pointed out that the difference between us and them is that the enemies for us were 3,000 miles away. The enemy for them is a kilometer away. And so there is a palpable sense of we have to address this now, and if we don't, we're going to cease to exist, because this is clearly an existential issue for the Jewish people and for the nation of Israel.
What I have heard clearly from Dr. Oren and from Haviv Redig-Gur on Dan Senor's podcast and others is that containment is no longer an option. The Israelis thought they could work out a modus operandi with Hamas and Hezbollah, and that's off the table now. They're going to wage war on Hamas until it's destroyed. Did you get that view, that there is nothing short of destruction of Hamas that will be acceptable to Israel?
Yes, I don't think they have any option. I mean, they're not going to have a country. Nobody's going to want to live in a place where you have on at least two sides, arguably more, people who every day who have as their principal objective in life to kill you and to wipe you off the map. And so, I mean, I think they've got to deal with this now. And I think you're right. I think they felt like for some time if they could just sort of coexist, and there'd be the occasional incursion, although they were more than incursions, they were attacks on Israelis. Since Hamas has taken over the Gaza Strip, this has been the fifth now. But this one, of course, was so heinous and so barbaric that people there, they can't live with that kind of fear and intimidation and constant threat. So there's just no question, in my view at least, that this is no longer an option to peacefully coexist or try to coexist with a terrorist organization on your border. They have to wipe them out.
Now, Senator Thune, Leader McConnell has made it clear he believes that Ukraine aid and Israel aid should advance quickly for both countries. The new Speaker, Johnson, has said no, Israel aid stand alone. How are the two houses going to come together on this? They're a pair of urgent needs, but there are divisions in the Republican Party on the one but not the other.
Correct, and that remains to be seen. I think the question will at least be partially answered by the end of this week. The House is going to try and report out an Israel-only package that's going to be paid for by cutting IRS agents, which is an offset that we all think is a very good one. And so if they can succeed in getting that to the Senate, then the question will be, will the Senate take that up, an Israel-only package? What does Schumer then do? Does he try and add Ukraine and some other components to it? Clearly there's a lot of interest on our side. We believe the southern border is an incredible vulnerability for our country, and that we've got to address the crisis down there as well in the package. So how it all comes together remains to be seen, but I think it will start. We'll start getting the answers to those questions into this week when we see whether or not the House can execute on passing an Israel-only package, and then see what the Democrat leader here in the Senate decides to do with it.
Last question, Senator. 18 people on the terror watch list were apprehended at the southern border last month, a total of 169 in the last fiscal year. How much of a real and present danger does this present to the United States in terms of terrorists crossing the southern border, or are those just an overbroad watch list netting too many people?
No, that is an incredibly dangerous threat. The very fact that there are now, any given year, what they call these special interest migrants coming across from Middle Eastern countries. There were 659 from Iran just in the last 2 years. The terrorists have figured out the vulnerabilities the U.S. has. And if you want to get into this country, you just come across the southern border, and for all intents and purposes, you're here. So, 270,000 border apprehensions in September. It's the worst month ever. And as you point out, 18 people just in the month of September on the terrorist watch list. trying to get into this country. That should scare and frighten every American, and we cannot sit by and not address it. Now they're going to say, well, you're going to need a Republican president to fix this, and to some degree there's some truth in that, but Congress should be doing what we can do to force this administration to finally draw a line in the sand and say enough already. We can't abide an open southern border.
Senator John Thune of South Dakota, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me, Senator, and thanks for the report from Israel. I'm glad you and Lindsey Graham and the rest of you went over there and got a first-hand look and can communicate to your colleagues what you saw there. Thank you, Senator.